You wake up every morning, scroll through Instagram, and invariably you will find a picture of yet another Hilux completely done up, maybe with a roof tent like this, with chunky tires, and obviously with the mandatory Hajar auxiliary lights. Except it's been a year since the Hilux has been launched, and I have not seen a single one on the road. Finally, Toyota India have been able to tide over the supply crisis, and they've got enough allocation for India. So here we are with our first test drive of the Hilux here in India. We're going to be taking it on the road, off the road, and also to some spectacular trails. So before we go ahead, don't forget to hit that like button, smash that bell icon to stay notified for all our video drops, and of course, stay subscribed to the Evo India channel.
Now I'm in the game, I was on the bench. First I was renting, now I'm collecting rent. First it with the Beamer, now I want the Benz. Spending all the back like here I go again.
We start with the off-roading because, come on, let's be serious about it. You're not going to buy a Hilux to do your daily city commute. It makes no sense. This is 5 meters in length. This is longer than a Mercedes S-Class. Where are you going to park it in the city? Finding a parking spot in your own society to park it is going to be a bit of a stretch. So you are going to buy it because you want to put your tent on the roof or your off-road motorcycles or cycles in the load bay and then head out into the outdoors. And that's what we are doing. So we are driving around in the periphery of the Rajaji National Park, not inside obviously because private vehicles aren't allowed, but on the periphery along these trails. The views are fantastic. These trails are not tough, to be honest. And the Hilux, I've got it in 2-wheel drive and it just breezes through everything. Honestly, this feels very similar to a Fortuner to drive. And that would be the case because this is based on the same platform as the Fortuner. Now the Innova, the Hi-Cross, that's moved to a monocoque with front-wheel drive. But the Hilux as well as the Fortuner, they are still on the IMV ladder frame chassis with rear-wheel drive and 4-wheel drive. There are only 3 variants of the Hilux and all of them get 4-wheel drive. So you have your 2-wheel drive, your 4-wheel high and 4-wheel low. In terms of differences over the Fortuner, the wheelbase, it is 300 mm longer. So the wheelbase is 3085, just over 3 meters, and it is massive. So when you're taking these tight trails or even when you're driving it around in the city, you have to look in your wing mirrors and make sure that your tail doesn't touch the edges of, I don't know, the parking area or the cliffside. You have to be aware of its size. And this is not going to shrink its size around you. This always makes you aware of how big it is. Now, coming back to what I said about how similar it feels to the Fortuner, the engine is also the same. It is the 2.8 liter 4-cylinder turbo diesel engine, makes 201 bhp. With the manual transmission, you get 420 Newton meters of torque, and with the automatic, which is what we are driving, you get 500 Newton meters of torque. You also have this eco and power buttons. I've just set it in its default setting because you don't really need much power out here. And it just takes it so easily. There's enough and more grunt to pull you out of everything. Like I said, I still haven't stuck it into 4-wheel drive. 2-wheel drive is enough and more out here. And the ladder frame jiggle that you get, that also is just so similar to the Fortuner, except it is a little bit more pronounced. So this is bumpy. After a bit, I will jump into the back seat. I'm not looking forward to it, but in the interest of proper road testing, I will jump into the back seat. But it's not comfortable out there. It doesn't have as much legroom as the Fortuner. And the Hilux, it's meant for carrying loads. It's meant for putting stuff in that load bay. And that's why with nothing in it, it is pretty bouncy. There's a lot of jiggle and movement and dub over all of this. You get thrown around a bit. So it's not the most comfortable thing to take off-road, but it is amongst the most capable things you can take off-road. serious off-roaders, they all swear by the Fortuner. They all use the Fortuner for a whole load of off-roading up here in the mountains. And the Fortuner, it never breaks down. It rarely, if ever, gets stuck. It's just a beast. It just keeps going and going and going. And the Hilux, it takes all of that and raises it up a notch. You know that famous saying, if you want to win a war, you need to get a Hilux. In all the conflict zones, you have Hiluxes running around. Yesterday at the presentation, Toyota talked about how the Hilux is the best-selling vehicle in some 130 countries or so. And I'm sure a lot of those countries are in Africa or in the conflict zones of the Middle East. Because when you are battling against the odds, when you have no support for hundreds and thousands of kilometers, when it's just you on your own, you can depend on a Hilux. You can bet your life on a Hilux. And that's not me talking. That's the millions of, I don't know what you call them, warriors. And when Toyota launched the Hilux last year, even though they did not offer a single test drive, not one media review, that entire initial allocation that they had all got sold out. Even at this price, this 37 lakh rupee price. It's a crazy price, but it's all sold out. That price is 10 lakh rupees more than its closest and nearest rival, the Isuzu V-Cross. And yet, they're finding enough and more buyers. And now finally, they have enough stock. Finally, they've got enough allocation of kits for India. And honestly, a lot of parts are shared with the Fortuner. In fact, the Hilux was the first to come on this IMV platform, and then came the Fortuner, and then came the Innova. We're now finally getting to the riverbed, and this is where we engage 4 high. So shift on the fly, 4-wheel drive high, and now we have some fun, more fun. So our first serious obstacle of the day, we've got it into 4 low now, and we're trying out this small crossing on the dry riverbed. It's just a sort of taster for what is to follow. Of course, when you go off-roading, you always need a spotter. Can't do without that. And when you off-road, always your thumbs outside the steering wheel, never inside. Off-roading is also always done slowly. You don't want to break your car, and you also always want to have some support or the other. So basically all you need to do is use the idling revs, use the creep function, and it just pulls through everything. And if you notice, this is really not exerting the Hilux at all. It's doing this like as if it's a walk in the park. I don't even have to touch the accelerator, just easing on and off the brakes. And it's just pottering through all of this. And that's it, we are done. So we first do the positive side incline, 2 wheels up on the bank, the other 2 in the stream, probably around 25-30 degrees angle, and then we drive through the riverbed. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing around 600 or maybe 700 millimeters of water wading. and we're driving through the deepest part of the stream, and all natural obstacles. The Hilux is an enabler for an active outdoorsy lifestyle that you probably didn't think you wanted or enjoyed. But after doing all this, I'm a lazy bum, but I'd love to do all of this. I'd love to get a Hilux, except for one reason. So now we're doing the negative side incline, where it is off camber, we're going downhill. What the instructor said is that nobody gives you the rollover angle of a car, but
Keep going steadily.
this thing does have some serious rollover angles. I think it just looks more dramatic from the outside than on the inside. But this feels really dramatic. And the idea is, of course, not to turn up, it's to go down. You don't want to intentionally topple the Hilux. So this is actually the first kind of serious obstacle that we've encountered. And just gives you a sense of how capable the Hilux really is. And this is why you need a proper ladder frame chassis, proper low ratio. And now what they're calling the mogul. I don't know why it's called mogul, but it looks serious. Again, thumbs outside the steering wheel. Okay, so now my right rear wheel is way up in the air, and they're really making us do some serious stuff. This ain't no child's play. And now we're going to drop to the other side. Okay, we'll now do that again with the diff lock engaged and see what a difference that makes. So put it into neutral, press the diff lock button. So now we got the inside rear wheel up in the air, and of course we have to stop for the photographers and all our guys making reels. Parking sensors have come on, cars at a crazy angle. Oh, and now with the diff lock engaged, it's just so much easier. Earlier I had to keep giving it gas, but with the diff lock engaged, I didn't have to give gas. I didn't have to make it struggle. Just ease off the brakes. It just gets grip and keeps carrying on. So yeah, that's what the diff lock does. And even climbing out of the ditch, no struggle, nothing. No wheel spin also. And now a nice water crossing. So you enter gently, create a nice bow wave, and then get out of the splash. And now we get off the dirt and onto tarmac and tell you what the Hilux is like when you're chewing in the miles on tarmac. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is that this feels very, very much like a Fortuner. That same imposing driving position, the same view outside, well, the same steering wheel, the same dash, everything is the same. The seats, they're big, they're comfortable, not supportive, there's no side bolstering, but they're nice big seats, very suited to the character of the Fortuner. And of course, the Hilux, it's got this all black color scheme on the inside. There's no sunroof. At the back, the seats are a little bolt upright, not that much space. So the Hilux is not something that you would want to be sitting in the back of. It's not horrible, but it's not the best around. That way, neither the Fortuner is very great in the back seat. But to drive this gives you that king of the world feel. It also takes up the entire width of the road. This is massive. 5 meters long, over 3 meters in terms of wheelbase. It's wide. And it's not the easiest car to maneuver. It does feel weighty. You do have to put a little effort into driving it on the road. Same like the Fortuner, but perhaps 10% more effort. The styling, it is bold, it is aggressive, all that chrome on the grille. It just screams at oncoming traffic, just get out of my way. You look at a Hilux in your rear view mirror and you will give it way. And then when you look at it from the back, especially the optional Toyota written across the tailgate, that's also really cool. Some of the Hiluxes on this media drive, they have been kitted out with a lot of accessories. And it all just looks cool. It just adds to the whole charm of the Hilux. If you're asking me which variant to buy, the standard variant doesn't lose much over the high variant. You get the same alloys, but in a different machined finish. I think you still have the infotainment. So you do get everything, and it is around 6 lakhs cheaper. So I would definitely recommend that you go for the standard, and then you customize it, you personalize it, you slap on your wheels and tires and all of that stuff that you want to do, and personalize the Hilux to suit your personality. So say you were to buy a Hilux, load it up with your camping gear, with your cycles, maybe with an ADV bike in the back, and come out here to this wild outdoors and really have a blast.
Now I'm in the game, I was on the bench. First I was renting, now I'm collecting rent. Run it up. First it with the Beamer, now I want the Benz. Spending all the back like here I go again.
The Hilux, it's not for everybody. Just look at the size of the thing. Where are you going to park it in the city? And then there's the price. It is really expensive. But as an enabler of an active outdoorsy lifestyle, put your tent on the top, put your camping gear, adventure gear, off-road bikes in the back, and you can head out to these beautiful outdoors that India has so much of. You can explore the country. You can really be at one with nature. This is a fantastic vehicle to go off-road, to go explore the country. It can also do on-road driving pretty well, almost as good as a Fortuner. Really, the Hilux is such a cool vehicle to have in your garage. In terms of desirability, man, there are very few things that can rival the Hilux.
Now I'm in the game, I was on the bench. First I was renting, now I'm collecting rent. Run it up. First it with the Beamer, now I want the Benz. Spending all the back like here I go again.